comes back, but he pretends or never addresses what occurred and is acting like we're still together. I hear about this all the time. What happens if a man just comes back? Maybe they've taken some space. It was a little longer than the woman wanted. He came back and just kind of acts like nothing happened. Would you suggest that a woman bring it up? I guess it depends on where you're at with him. Are you in an exclusive relationship? But Matt, anything there? There's another one here from Christina. Do you think they'll think we're doormats if we just keep talking? Is there ever a time where you should address it and say, "Hey, I felt a little confused or concerned when I didn't hear from you"?
Yeah, I absolutely think that you should address it at some point, but the time you address it isn't when he shows up, right? It's like it's at another point in time than that. And so it depends, right? It depends. And so one depends on you. So for instance, I had a woman on my live stream about a month ago or something like that, where she came on and she's like, my guy is hot and cold all the time. And I'm like, well, how much is all the time? Right. And she's like, every single day. And I'm like, he's hot and cold. Like, what do you mean he's hot and cold? Like, is he like angry and then nice, or is he like there and not there? And she's like, well, he stops talking to me in the evening and then doesn't start talking to me again until the next morning. And I'm like, oh, right. Like, that's pretty normal. You mean he like went and had dinner and then went to sleep and then woke up the next day and contacted you? Right. And so it depends on what's going on, right? Because it might actually be a normal period of time depending on what's going on with you, right? So if you think, oh, this guy is hot and cold and he disappeared for 3 days, he disappeared for 5 days and then he came back and he thinks we're still in a relationship together, right? Which is something that happens all the time. It was funny because I was talking to a woman on one of my live streams about exactly this topic. And I was talking about how a lot of men are scared to come back because they know how women react when you come back. And so a lot of guys know, if I'm talking to a woman and I don't message her for 3 or 4 days and then I message her, I'm going to get chewed out. And this happens a lot, right? And so a lot of times guys are like, oh, well, I'm just not going to ever come back, right? Because I don't want to get chewed out. I don't want to have to deal with it. And so you have to figure out, one, is this a reasonable amount of time, right? Not according to your brain, which is overthinking and constantly trying to figure out what's going on and does he love me? And it's been another 3 hours and he hasn't contacted me again. It's hot and cold. He doesn't love me. Make it stop, right? And then you go like a day and you think it's been an eternity, and it's like, it's been a day, right? And so you have to figure out, one, is this a long period of time? And then sometimes we have women that are like, yeah, he left for 3 weeks, right? And if he leaves for 3 weeks, that's a completely different thing, right? Like, if you do want him in your life, like I said, when he does reach out to you, just thank him for reaching out to you, start a conversation with him again, ask him, get curious about what happened. What happened? Where have you been? Like, you kind of disappeared for the last 3 weeks. Did you fall in a toilet? Did you walk off a cliff? Did you know what I mean? Like, were you quarantined? Like, what happened? Like, was there something that happened? That's kind of weird, right? And just be curious about it, and not accusatory, not attacking, not any of that kind of stuff. And just asking him what's going on. What happened to you? Where have you been? What have you been up to? Right? It's a normal conversation. It's not, something out of the blue or out of the ordinary or anything like, you were doing, a project came up for you at work. Wow, that's really interesting. And just talking to him about that, and, and framing the conversation to what it is that you want to have happen. And, if you want to, you can always ask him, if set a boundary and ask him if that does happen again, that he lets you know that something's going on and that he's going to be away, that he's going to have a project that he has to work on, that his grandmother got sick again, the 6th time this month, whatever. Right. And just let you know what's going on so that, you don't worry about him or whatever. And, Like one of the problems that a lot of women have when they do a lot of this stuff is that they get caught up in the emotion, right? They get so caught up in this emotion that they're like, they come through the emotion and they come out of the emotion and they're angry. So they're like, but if you can kind of distance yourself a little bit from the emotion and get curious about what's going on with him instead. And even if you feel the emotion, but you're not acting through it. So for instance, let me give you an example of this. So sometimes women get really jealous and then they'll like start freaking out, right? If you talk to a guy and you let him know that you're jealous, but you're not talking through the jealousy, right? It's a totally different thing. Right. If you're jealous and you talk to a guy and you're talking through the jealousy, you're like, right. Do you love somebody else? Do you not love me? Are you seeing someone? Did you sleep with her? Right. Like all those things. Right. And you kind of talk like that. And if you're talking from a place of jealousy, you're like, I don't know. I get this feeling like, I don't know, like I get jealous, like I get like worried about you seeing somebody else or something like that. And I know it's completely irrational, but it comes up in me, right? Those are two completely different conversations. And a man will act very differently depending on which one you have, because one of them is speaking through this emotion and coming from it. And when you're doing that, all of a sudden he's like, whoa, this feels really gross and I'm not sure I want to be around that. And the other one is like, it's almost like an intellectual conversation that you're having about an experience that you're having. And you, if you want to distance yourself about it, from it, you can have more rational conversations with him and he won't feel like he wants to run away from you if you're having those conversations in that way. I don't know if that makes any sense to everybody.
I think it's great. I mean, same thing with insecurity or anything. It's like, who can't relate to that? Saying, yeah, of course I feel insecure sometimes, right? That creates intimacy and connection versus stuffing that down, trying to pretend that you don't feel insecure. And then it's going to come out in all these weird ways, right? Asking where he's been constantly or who is this woman on your social media. So it's one thing we talked about this at the beginning of this live stream, right? It's one thing to just own it and feel it and say, yeah, of course, sometimes I can feel insecure. I can feel jealous sometimes. I mean, who can't relate to that versus stuffing that down and just trying to be cool and just do all these right things and say all the right things. But just like Matt said, if you what's on the inside is going to come out just like it is with him. So I think it's great. I think it's great what you said here.